Uno ha crecido con las borregas, crecí en mi país con borregas y todo lo trabajo no es novedad para mí, ¿no?
It's easy to tell a convincing story when you omit information that doesn't support your agenda. The H2A sheep ranchers have been victimized in the media by this tactic as special interest groups distort information and equate working in the great outdoors as unacceptable.
My time with the shepherds has proven to be something that I would like to actually write a book about because it has expanded into an understanding of the ranchers. This trade did not get started by some rich guy who bought a bunch of sheep and then hired some Latin American to come do it. The history behind the trade of the Greeks, of the Basque from France or Spain is really a rich heritage. So many of these ranchers now, who are being called names, have actually done what the herders have done, only more difficult circumstances for them. One good friend of mine, whom I'll always remember, when he came to this country as a teenager, lived in a tent year-round. And he said it's no problem. He said, Esteban, he said, in the wintertime, all you have to do is push more snow up around the edge of that tent and stoke up that fire and you got a warm little place to sleep. Well, now, that doesn't happen. Things have changed dramatically from then. In fact, in my 11 years, I have seen a lot of improvements, a lot of comforts brought into these men's lives that they didn't have before. But these ranchers have come from a heritage where they have done this in their native countries and come here and done it themselves. They've worked with these men here. That's how I got to know a lot of the ranchers was at shearing time. And the springtime shipping, fall, selling the lambs. It's been a real blessing to get to know the ranchers as we have worked together and as I've seen them work with their shepherds. This is a team effort.
Yet, as special interest groups cry foul, the reality is that sheep herding on the open range can be a lonely and difficult job at times, but neither isolated working conditions nor the lack of modern conveniences constitute abuse and neglect.
I don't know. I guess personally, I probably think there's a lot of perceptions that they're focusing on, and it's their own perceptions. And I'm not sure that they've looked into the situation thoroughly to be able to say, you know, for certain that these are abuses. You know, the job is the job that needs to be done, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's abuse. Yeah, granted, it's not a 9 to 5, and it's not a office job, and it's probably a job not for everybody, but that's still doesn't constitute abuse.
Vivir en la ciudad es muy diferente, pero ahora como yo estoy trabajando en Borrega, acá es vivir es amplio, cómodo, tienes todo, tienes gas, tienes con leña cuando hace frío y la comida te trae según tú le mandas lista al patrón, pero allá en nuestro país tenemos nuestra chocita de paja, cocinamos en el suelo, y a veces cocinamos con el estiércol de la vaca y para llevar leña. Allá no tenemos carro como tienen los patrones, tenemos que cocinar con lo que bota su estiércol las vacas ahí en la puna.
Siempre no nos descuida cuando somos borregueros o cuando somos trabajadores. Entonces, el patrón viene a la semana o puede venir a los 2 días, 3 días, dependiendo cómo uno está en la zona, ¿no? Entonces, a veces viene a los 4 días, 2 días o un día para otro puede venir, porque dependiendo qué problemas se presentan en las borregas o en el borreguero.
It should also be noted that thousands of people spend a great deal of time and money in order to rough it in these very same areas that the sheep herders work in. Promoting our great outdoors is a cornerstone of Western tourism. The nature of sheep herding does mean that herders are on the open range, sometimes far from the nearest town. It is also true that herders are with the sheep nearly all of the time.
Todo me gusta, de ser borreguero, y por eso desde muy joven yo me siento borreguero.
In a typical work day, the herder might actively watch the sheep about 6 to 8 hours, with longer work days up to about 10 hours per day. During the lambing in the spring, and shorter 4 to 6 hour days in the fall and winter. A single herder typically watches about 1,000 head of sheep, and the herder manages the sheep with the assistance of specially trained herding and livestock protection dogs. In the summer, a herder will get up at dawn and take his horse or mule to check on the sheep, sometimes a mile away. The herder might move the sheep to fresh pasture, give them salt, doctor the sheep if needed, and take them to water. After a couple of hours, when the sheep settle down, the herder might travel back to his camp where he will make breakfast and then tend to his own chores, such as washing his clothes or cleaning up his camp. At about 3 in the afternoon, the herder will go check on the sheep again, tuck in the edges, gather in any strays, watch the sheep settle down for the night, and then return to his camp around 7 p.m. In the fall, shipping occurs and lambs are sent to the feedlots or moved to graze on crop aftermath. The herders assist in trailing the sheep off the mountain, sorting and loading. Shipping can occur over several days and take a few hours in the morning or up to a full day. In the winter, sheep ranchers will keep the sheep out on the open desert range or else bring them closer to town and graze on farmers' fields. Either way, in the winter, the sheep are likely provided supplemental feed such as alfalfa or corn. In a farm field setting, sheep require less herding than on open range. Given the shorter days, the routine for the herder is likely the same, but perhaps 4 to 6 hours of actively tending to the sheep down from 8 hours in the summer. In the spring, the routine changes. The sheep will be trailed to the ranch when lambing starts, requiring long days, up to 10 hours, and lasting up to 35 days. Shearing also occurs during this time. The herders might work an 8 to 10 hour day for about 2 to 5 days during shearing.
At our headquarters here at the ranch, the guys are here roughly 6 months out of the year, off and on, but they have access to showers and you know, running toilets and everything here at the ranch, running water, and access to a phone as well. And you know, that makes their job a little easier as well, to knowing that, you know, they can come back and have those facilities.
They also have laundering facilities. And it almost becomes where when they go back home, and they miss these amenities here from the United States. So, and when they go back home, they kind of know it's an education for them. So sometimes they find deals, and they improve their facilities to make them more Americanized, I would probably say.
Colorado ranchers usually visit each herder at least twice weekly in the summer and winter, depending upon the season. The herder might be within shouting distance from the ranch in the winter, or up to 150 miles away in the summer. The sheep herder camps are almost always accessible by vehicle.
On a year-round basis, we check on our men at a minimum of every 3 days. I have men that are my camp movers and my camp tenders, and in fact, in the wintertime, it's about every day and a half that they're checked on, just because of the way we run the sheep in the wintertime. In the summertime, the most may be 3 to 4 days, just depending on what's going on.